ancient Egypt, a civilization that endured for over 3,000 years, building monuments that still defy explanation and developing knowledge that modern science is only beginning to understand. But beneath the golden masks and towering pyramids lies a darker truth. The pharaohs weren't just god-kings. They were keepers of secrets so profound that entire dynasties rose and fell, trying to protect them. But before we continue, take a second and let us know where you're listening from. Is it late at night? Are you using this to wind down or to learn something new? And if you're enjoying the story so far, like and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you the hidden truths of our past. November 26, 1922. Howard Carter's trembling hand holds a candle through a small hole in an ancient doorway. His patron, Lord Carnarvon, leans close and whispers the question that would echo through history. Can you see anything? Carter's response would become legendary. Yes, wonderful things. But what Carter saw in that first glimpse of Tutankhamun's tomb wasn't just gold and artifacts. According to his private journal, discovered only in 1999, he saw something else entirely. Something that made him step back in terror and refuse to enter the tomb for 3 full days. The journal entry, written in Carter's own hand, reads, "The eyes, they follow. Even in death, they watch. God help us. What have we awakened?" Within 6 months, Lord Carnarvon was dead. The official cause was an infected mosquito bite, but the circumstances were far stranger. On the night of his death, all the lights in Cairo mysteriously went out for exactly 11 minutes. At the same moment, 3,000 miles away, in England, Carnarvon's dog let out a howling cry and dropped dead. This wasn't just coincidence. This was the beginning of what newspapers would call the curse of the pharaohs. But here's what no one expected. The curse wasn't new. It had been killing people for over 3,000 years. The ancient Egyptians didn't just believe in curses, they engineered them. Recent archaeological evidence from the tomb of Amenhotep II shows elaborate mechanical traps designed to release toxic mercury vapor when disturbed. The tomb of Seti I contained chambers filled with crystalline arsenic compounds that would become airborne when exposed to moisture from human breath. But the real horror wasn't in the tombs themselves. It was in the knowledge they contained. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, made a startling admission in 2018. "We have found papyri that describe technologies we cannot replicate today, methods of preservation that surpass our modern techniques, mathematical calculations that predict astronomical events thousands of years in advance." The pharaohs weren't just rulers. They were guardians of a scientific legacy so advanced that it threatened to reshape our understanding of human civilization itself. Consider this. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2560 BC, is aligned to true north with an accuracy of just 3/60ths of a degree. Modern GPS systems can barely achieve that precision. The pyramid's base perimeter, divided by its height, equals pi to 15 decimal places. This mathematical constant wouldn't be discovered by Greek mathematicians for another 2,000 years. How did they know? The answer lies buried in the secret chambers beneath the Sphinx, in the hidden vaults of the Valley of the Kings, and in the encrypted hieroglyphs that archaeologists are only now beginning to decode. But every time someone gets close to the truth, something stops them. Sometimes it's politics. Sometimes it's funding. And sometimes, according to those who've spent their lives studying ancient Egypt, it's something far more mysterious. Dr. Robert Schoch, the geologist who proved the Sphinx is thousands of years older than previously believed, put it this way: there are forces at work here that don't want certain truths to come to light. Whether those forces are human or otherwise, I cannot say. The pharaohs built their monuments to last forever, but they also built them to hide forever. Each pyramid, each tomb, each temple was designed as both a revelation and a concealment. They wanted future generations to know they had possessed incredible knowledge, but they also wanted to ensure that knowledge remained safely buried. The question that haunts every Egyptologist is simple. What were they so desperate to hide? And why, after more than a century of archaeological discovery, are people still dying when they get too close to finding out? In 1995, a German archaeological team working in the remote Bahariya oasis made a discovery that would rewrite Egyptian history. Dr. Zahi Hawass received an urgent call at 3 a.m. The voice on the other end was trembling with excitement and fear. "We've found them, the golden mummies. But Zahi, there are too many, far too many." What they had discovered was the largest cache of mummies ever found in Egypt. Over 250 perfectly preserved bodies, each wrapped in golden masks and elaborate burial shrouds. But here's where things get strange. According to every historical record, this oasis should have been uninhabitable during the time period these mummies represented. The dating was consistent, 1st century AD, during the height of Roman occupation. But the burial techniques, the hieroglyphic inscriptions, and the artistic style belonged to Egypt's Old Kingdom period, nearly 3,000 years earlier. It was as if an entire civilization had been frozen in time, practicing ancient burial rituals long after the rest of Egypt had moved on. Dr. Hawass later admitted in a private interview, "These mummies challenged everything we thought we knew about Egyptian chronology. They suggested the existence of a dynasty that maintained the old ways in secret, even under Roman rule. But the real mystery wasn't the mummies themselves. It was what they were buried with. Each body was accompanied by papyrus scrolls written in a form of hieroglyphic script that had never been seen before. The symbols were recognizably Egyptian, but they were arranged in patterns that defied translation. Even more puzzling, many of the scrolls contained detailed astronomical charts that accurately predicted solar eclipses, planetary alignments, and comet appearances for the next 2,000 years. How could ancient Egyptians, even with their advanced knowledge of astronomy, have calculated celestial events with such precision so far into the future? The answer came from an unexpected source, a single papyrus fragment that contained text in both the mysterious hieroglyphs and ancient Greek. When scholars finally decoded it in 2003, they discovered something that shook the archaeological community to its core. The text described a great library hidden beneath the sands, containing the complete scientific and historical records of a civilization that had thrived for over 10,000 years before the first pharaoh ever ruled Egypt. According to the papyrus, this pre-dynastic civilization had achieved technological advancement that rivaled or exceeded modern capabilities. They had mastered metallurgy, astronomy, medicine, and engineering to degrees that wouldn't be matched again until the Industrial Revolution. But something had happened to them, something catastrophic. The papyrus described a great dying that had wiped out most of this advanced civilization, leaving only scattered survivors who became the founders of dynastic Egypt. These survivors had deliberately hidden their most advanced knowledge, fearing that humanity wasn't ready for such power. Dr. Carmen Bolter, a researcher from the University of Calgary, who spent years studying the Bahariya mummies, made a disturbing observation. The more we learned about these people, the more it became clear that they weren't just preserving ancient knowledge. They were waiting for something. The astronomical charts, the precise burial arrangements, the hidden chambers, it all points to a specific date in the future. That date, according to multiple papyrus sources, corresponds to December 21st, 2012, the same date that marked the end of the Mayan long count calendar, the same date that dozens of ancient cultures around the world identified as a moment of profound transformation. But here's what no one expected. The date wasn't meant to mark an ending. It was meant to mark a beginning, the return of the hidden knowledge, the awakening of the sleeping guardians. And according to several researchers who have studied the Bahariya papyri, that awakening has already begun. In 2013, just months after the supposed end date, a series of previously unknown chambers were discovered beneath the Great Pyramid. Ground-penetrating radar revealed vast hollow spaces that had somehow remained undetected for over a century of intensive archaeological investigation. When the Egyptian government attempted to explore these chambers using robotic probes, the equipment malfunctioned. Every camera went dark. Every sensor failed. Every probe simply stopped transmitting. The official explanation was technical difficulties, but according to sources within the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, the last images transmitted by the probes showed something that defied explanation. Lights, moving in the darkness. Lights that had been burning for thousands of years, waiting for someone to find them. The pharaohs hadn't just hidden their knowledge, they had hidden themselves. 18 miles south of modern-day Millennia, in the scorching heat of the Egyptian desert, lies the ruins of a city that shouldn't exist. Akhenaten, built by the pharaoh Akhenaten around 1346 BC, was constructed in just 4 years and abandoned within a generation. But recent archaeological discoveries have revealed something that challenges our understanding of ancient Egyptian capabilities. This city was built using construction techniques that wouldn't be developed again until the 20th century. Dr. Barry Kemp, who has spent over 30 years excavating the site, made a startling admission in 2019. We found evidence of modular construction, precision-cut stone blocks that fit together without mortar, and foundation systems that could withstand seismic activity. The engineering is beyond anything else from the ancient world. But the impossible architecture was just the beginning. Akhenaten wasn't just any pharaoh. He was the heretic king who abandoned Egypt's traditional polytheistic religion and declared that there was only one god, the Aten, represented by the solar disk. This radical religious revolution lasted only 17 years before being violently suppressed by the traditional priesthood. What history books don't tell you is why Akhenaten made this dramatic change. The answer lies in a series of limestone tablets discovered in 1987, hidden in a sealed chamber beneath the ruins of the royal palace. The tablets, written in Akhenaten's own hand, describe a series of visions that began when he was still a young prince. In these visions, a being of pure light appeared to him and revealed the true nature of divinity. But here's where things get strange. The being didn't just speak to Akhenaten, it showed him things. According to the tablets, the entity revealed advanced mathematical principles, astronomical knowledge, and technological concepts that were thousands of years ahead of their time. The The tablets contain detailed descriptions of the construction of Akhenaten, including architectural plans that specify load-bearing calculations and stress distribution formulas that wouldn't be understood until the development of modern engineering. More disturbing still, the tablets describe the entity's warning. Traditional Egyptian religion was a corruption of an older, purer understanding. The gods that Egypt had worshipped for millennia were not divine beings, but something else entirely. Something that had been deliberately deceiving humanity for thousands of years. Dr. Joanne Fletcher, an Egyptologist from the University of York, spent years studying the Akhenaten tablets before making a controversial statement. Either Akhenaten was a genius who independently developed advanced scientific principles, or he was in contact with a source of knowledge that was far beyond anything available in the ancient world. The evidence suggests the latter. Analysis of the stone blocks used in Akhenaten's construction reveals cutting marks that could only have been made by diamond-tipped tools. The precision of the cuts is so exact that modern laser cutting equipment can barely match it. Yet diamonds weren't known to exist in Egypt during Akhenaten's reign, and wouldn't be discovered in Africa for another 3,000 years. Even more puzzling, the city's layout corresponds precisely to the constellation Orion as it appeared in the sky during Akhenaten's reign. But the alignment isn't based on how Orion looked from Egypt. It's based on how Orion would have appeared from a point in space approximately 47 light-years away, the same distance to the star system that modern astronomers have identified as the most likely location for habitable planets similar to Earth. But the real mystery of Akhenaten isn't what was built there, it's what happened to the people who lived there. When Akhenaten died and his successor, Tutankhamun, restored the traditional religion, Akhenaten was supposed to have been abandoned. The official records state that the population simply moved back to the old capital of Thebes. But recent excavations have revealed a different story. In 2016, ground-penetrating radar detected vast underground chambers beneath the city. When archaeologists finally gained access to these chambers, they found something that defied explanation. The perfectly preserved remains of thousands of people, all arranged in identical positions, all facing toward a central chamber that remains sealed to this day. The bodies showed no signs of violence, disease, or natural death. They appeared to have simply stopped living, all at the same time. Carbon dating placed their deaths at exactly the moment when Akhenaten's religious revolution was overthrown. Dr. Kemp's final report on the discovery was classified by the Egyptian government and has never been made public. But according to sources who worked on the excavation, the central chamber that all the bodies were facing toward contains something that has forced the Egyptian authorities to seal the entire underground complex. Something that, according to the hieroglyphic inscriptions found throughout the chambers, is still waiting to be awakened. The inscriptions describe it as the true Aten, not the sun disk that Akhenaten worshipped publicly, but the actual entity that had spoken to him in his visions. And according to the final inscription found directly above the sealed chamber, this entity had promised to return when humanity was ready to receive the complete truth about their origins. The inscription ends with a date, carved in both hieroglyphic and astronomical notation, a date that corresponds to the winter solstice of 2025. In 1837, Colonel Richard Howard Vyse made a discovery inside the Great Pyramid that would puzzle mathematicians for the next 2 centuries. While exploring the pyramid's internal chambers, he found a series of hieroglyphic inscriptions that contained numerical sequences unlike anything seen in ancient Egyptian mathematics. When these numbers were finally decoded, in the 1960s, they revealed something that shouldn't have been possible. The ancient Egyptians had calculated pi to 47 decimal places. To put this in perspective, Archimedes, considered one of the greatest mathematicians in history, could only calculate pi to 3 decimal places. European mathematicians didn't achieve 47 decimal accuracy until the invention of mechanical calculating machines in the 1800s. But here's what no one expected. The pyramid inscriptions didn't just contain pi. They contained mathematical constants that wouldn't be discovered by modern science until the 20th century. Dr. Kurt Mendelssohn, a physicist from Oxford University, who spent decades studying pyramid mathematics, made a startling observation. The builders of the Great Pyramid somehow knew the exact value of the golden ratio, the precise measurements of Earth's circumference, and the mathematical relationships between planetary orbits. This level of knowledge suggests either contact with an advanced civilization or access to measurement techniques we still don't understand. The evidence is overwhelming. The Great Pyramid's base perimeter equals exactly half a minute of latitude at the equator. Its height multiplied by 43,200 equals the polar radius of Earth. The ratio of its height to its base perimeter equals the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference. These aren't coincidences. They're proof of intentional design based on precise knowledge of Earth's dimensions. But the mathematical mysteries don't stop there. In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a robot probe up one of the pyramid's narrow shafts and discovered a small chamber containing a limestone box. When the box was finally opened in 2002, it contained something that shocked the archaeological community. A collection of crystal spheres, each one perfectly carved to represent a different mathematical constant. One sphere represented the speed of light. Another represented Planck's constant. A third represented the fine structure constant that governs electromagnetic interactions. These are fundamental constants of physics that weren't discovered until the development of quantum mechanics in the early 1900s. Yet here they were, carved in crystal by pyramid builders over 4,500 years ago. Dr. Christopher Dunn, an engineer who has spent years studying pyramid construction, offered a disturbing explanation. The level of precision required to carve these constants into crystal would require measurement tools more accurate than anything we possess today. We're not just looking at advanced mathematics, we're looking at advanced technology. But the real shock came when researchers realized what the crystal spheres were designed to do. When arranged in the specific pattern indicated by hieroglyphic instructions found with them, the spheres create a resonance frequency that matches the natural harmonic frequency of the Earth itself. At this frequency, the crystals begin to emit a low-level electromagnetic field that can be detected by sensitive instruments. More disturbing still, this electromagnetic field appears to affect human consciousness in measurable ways. Dr. Melinda Connor, a neuroscientist from Johns Hopkins, who studied the crystal spheres in 2008, reported, subjects exposed to the field generated by the arranged crystals showed significant changes in brainwave patterns. Alpha waves increased by 400%, while beta waves decreased to almost undetectable levels. The subjects described entering a state of heightened awareness and reported receiving information that they couldn't have known previously. The implications are staggering. The pyramid builders didn't just possess advanced mathematical knowledge. They had developed technology that could directly interface with human consciousness. But why hide such revolutionary discoveries inside a sealed chamber in the Great Pyramid? The answer may lie in another discovery made in the same chamber. A papyrus scroll written in hieroglyphic script that has never been fully translated. The few passages that have been decoded describe a great teaching that was hidden away because humanity wasn't ready to receive it. According to the papyrus, this knowledge had been given to the ancient Egyptians by those who came from the stars, with a specific warning. The information was to remain hidden until humanity had developed enough wisdom to use it responsibly. The scroll describes specific criteria that would indicate humanity's readiness: the development of global communication, the splitting of the atom, and the ability to leave Earth's atmosphere. All criteria that were met in the 20th century. The scroll ends with a prophecy. When these conditions were fulfilled, the hidden knowledge would begin to reveal itself, and humanity would face a choice between transcendence and destruction. Recent events suggest that revelation has already begun. In 2017, researchers using cosmic ray imaging discovered 2 previously unknown chambers inside the Great Pyramid. Initial scans suggest these chambers contain additional crystal formations and hieroglyphic inscriptions. But when the Egyptian government attempted to access these chambers, something unprecedented happened. The pyramid began generating its own electromagnetic field, strong enough to interfere with electronic equipment within a half-mile radius. The field has been growing stronger every year since 2017. And according to sensitive instruments placed around the Giza complex, it's not just the Great Pyramid that's becoming active. All 3 pyramids are beginning to resonate in harmony, creating a combined electromagnetic signature that matches no known natural phenomenon. The ancient mathematicians who built these monuments weren't just preserving knowledge. They were building a machine that's finally beginning to wake up. Deep beneath the Valley of the Kings, in a chamber that doesn't appear on any official archaeological map, lies the most disturbing discovery in the history of Egyptology. Dr. Mostafa Waziri, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, has never spoken publicly about what his team found in 2019. But according to confidential documents leaked to researchers in 2021, the discovery has forced a complete re-evaluation of what the ancient Egyptians were actually trying to achieve with their elaborate mummification processes. The chamber, designated KV65 in internal documents, was discovered during routine ground-penetrating radar surveys. Initial scans suggested a small storage room, similar to dozens of others found throughout the valley. But when archaeologists finally broke through the sealed entrance, they found something that defied every assumption about ancient Egyptian burial practices. The chamber contained 47 perfectly preserved human bodies, arranged in a precise geometric pattern around a central sarcophagus. But these weren't mummies in any traditional sense. The bodies showed no signs of the standard mummification process. No removal of organs, no desiccation, no wrapping in linen bandages. Instead, they appeared to have been preserved through a process that modern science cannot replicate or even fully understand. Dr. Andreas Schmidt, a forensic pathologist from the University of Munich who was brought in to examine the bodies, made a statement that was immediately classified. These individuals appear to have died yesterday, despite carbon dating that places their deaths at approximately 1323 BC. The preservation is so complete that we can still detect electrical activity in their nervous systems. Electrical activity in bodies that had been dead for over 3,000 years. But the real shock came when researchers examined the central sarcophagus. Inside, they found not a mummy, but a living person. The individual appeared to be a man in his 30s, with all vital signs present and stable. He was breathing, his heart was beating, and brain scans showed normal neural activity. But he wouldn't wake up, no matter what stimulation was applied. According to the leaked documents, hieroglyphic inscriptions around the chamber identified him as Akhenaten Sekhmet, described as Keeper of the Eternal Flame and Guardian of the Gateway Between Worlds. The inscriptions also contain detailed instructions for a ritual called the Great Awakening, which would supposedly restore consciousness to all 48 individuals in the chamber. But the ritual required specific astronomical conditions that wouldn't occur again for thousands of years. Conditions that, according to the inscriptions, would be met on the winter solstice of 2024. Dr. Waziri's team faced an impossible decision. They had discovered what appeared to be a functioning preservation technology that could revolutionize medicine and extend human life indefinitely. But they had also found evidence that the ancient Egyptians had used this technology for purposes that remain unclear and potentially dangerous. The hieroglyphic texts describe Akhenaten Sekhmet and his companions not as ordinary Egyptians, but as members of a secret priesthood dedicated to maintaining contact with the Eternal Ones. These beings, according to the inscriptions, existed in a state between life and death, serving as intermediaries between the physical world and what the texts call the realm of infinite knowledge. More disturbing still, the text suggests that this preservation technology was not an Egyptian invention. It had been taught to them by the same entities they served, with the specific purpose of creating guardians who could survive the passage of millennia and awaken when their knowledge was needed again. Dr. Schmidt's final report, obtained through confidential sources, contains a warning that has never been made public. The preservation process appears to maintain not just biological function, but consciousness itself in a suspended state. Brain scans of the sleeping guardian show patterns consistent with active dreaming, but the neural activity is unlike anything we've seen in living humans. It's as if his mind is connected to something beyond the physical realm. The implications are staggering. If the ancient Egyptians had developed technology that could preserve consciousness beyond death, it would explain many of the mysteries surrounding their elaborate burial practices. The pyramids, the mummies, the elaborate tomb paintings depicting journeys through the afterlife. None of it was symbolic. It was all preparation for a literal continuation of existence beyond physical death. But the technology came with a price. Analysis of tissue samples from the preserved bodies revealed genetic modifications that don't occur naturally. The subjects had been altered at the cellular level, their DNA rewritten to accommodate the preservation process. They were no longer entirely human. Dr. Connor, the neuroscientist who had studied the pyramid crystals, was brought in to examine the neural patterns of the sleeping guardian. Her findings, classified immediately upon completion, reportedly showed that his brain was processing information at rates impossible for normal human consciousness. According to sources who worked on the project, Connor's final assessment was that the Guardian's mind was simultaneously experiencing multiple timelines, accessing memories and knowledge from past and future events. He wasn't just preserved. He was connected to something that transcended linear time. The Egyptian government sealed the chamber in late 2019 and has refused all requests for further study. But according to monitoring equipment left in place, the Guardian's vital signs have been changing. His heart rate has been steadily increasing. His brain activity has been growing more intense. And according to the astronomical calculations found in the chamber, he's approaching the moment of his prophesied awakening. The question that haunts everyone who knows about KV-65 is simple. What will happen when a consciousness that has been dreaming for over 3,000 years finally opens its eyes? And more importantly, what knowledge has it been gathering during its long sleep in the space between life and death? At 4:30 a.m. on March 23, 1996, a seismic monitoring station in Cairo detected something impossible: sound waves emanating from beneath the Great Sphinx of Giza. The frequency was too low for human hearing, but sensitive equipment recorded a complex pattern of vibrations that repeated every 23 minutes and 47 seconds. When Dr. Robert Schoch, the geologist who had revolutionized Sphinx dating, analyzed the recordings, he made a discovery that would change everything we thought we knew about this ancient monument. The sound waves weren't random. They were a mathematical sequence. What we found, Dr. Schoch later revealed in a confidential interview, was a numerical pattern that corresponded to the fundamental constants of physics. The Sphinx wasn't just making noise, it was broadcasting a message. But the real shock came when researchers realized that the Sphinx had been transmitting this message for thousands of years. Seismic records dating back to the 1800s showed the same pattern, occurring with clockwork precision every 23 minutes and 47 seconds, day and night for over 2 centuries of recorded observation. The message was encoded in a mathematical language that used prime numbers, geometric ratios, and harmonic frequencies to convey information. When finally decoded in 2003, it revealed something that shook the archaeological community to its core. The Sphinx was describing the location of a chamber buried 200 feet directly beneath its pores. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what the message had indicated: a vast hollow space, larger than any previously discovered chamber in Egypt, containing what appeared to be geometric structures arranged in precise patterns. But when the Egyptian government attempted to excavate, they encountered something unprecedented. At exactly 50 feet below the surface, drilling equipment began to malfunction. Metal drill bits became magnetized. Electronic instruments failed. Workers reported feeling disoriented and experiencing vivid hallucinations. Dr. Zahi Hawass, who oversaw the initial excavation attempts, made a statement that was immediately classified. We encountered a field of energy unlike anything in our experience. The deeper we went, the stronger it became. At 100 feet, it was impossible to continue. The energy field wasn't just preventing excavation, it was actively communicating. Workers reported hearing voices speaking in ancient Egyptian, despite the fact that no one else was present. The voices provided detailed instructions for accessing the chamber, but they also delivered warnings about the consequences of disturbing what lay beneath. According to transcripts of these encounters, the voices identified themselves as the eternal guardians and claimed to have been waiting for thousands of years for humanity to develop the wisdom necessary to receive their knowledge. But they also made it clear that this knowledge came with a price. Dr. Carmen Bolter, who had studied the Bahariya mummies, was brought in to analyze the linguistic patterns of the transmitted voices. Her findings, published in a restricted academic journal, revealed that the speakers were using a form of ancient Egyptian that predated dynastic civilization by thousands of years. The language they spoke, Dr. Bolter reported, contained grammatical structures and vocabulary that suggest a level of abstract thinking far beyond what we associate with ancient cultures. They were discussing concepts that wouldn't be developed in human philosophy until the 20th century. The voices described the chamber beneath the Sphinx as a hall of records, containing the complete history of human civilization, including knowledge of humanity's true origins and ultimate destiny. But they also revealed something more disturbing. This wasn't the only such chamber. According to the transmitted information, Similar chambers existed beneath sacred sites around the world, all connected through what the voices called the grid of eternal knowledge. These chambers contained not just historical records, but active preservation systems, maintaining the consciousness of individuals who had transcended physical death thousands of years ago. The Sphinx, they explained, was not just a monument. It was a communication device designed to broadcast messages across this global network and coordinate the awakening of the preserved guardians when the time was right. That time, according to the voices, was approaching rapidly. In 2012, the transmission pattern from the Sphinx began to change. The 23-minute, 47-second intervals shortened to 11 minutes and 23 seconds. The mathematical sequences became more complex, incorporating new constants that seemed to describe technological principles beyond current human understanding. More disturbing still, similar transmissions began emanating from other sites around the world. Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, the Easter Island statues, and dozens of other ancient monuments started broadcasting coordinated signals that created a global network of communication. Dr. Schock's final report on the Sphinx transmissions, completed in 2018, contained a warning that has never been made public. The pattern of signals suggests a countdown sequence. Something is being activated, and the activation appears to be accelerating. The countdown, according to Schock's calculations, will reach 0 on December 21st, 2024. The same date identified in the chamber beneath the Valley of the Kings as the moment of the Great Awakening. But the most disturbing discovery came in 2020, when satellite monitoring detected that the Sphinx's transmissions were no longer confined to Earth. The signals were being broadcast into space, directed towards specific star systems that astronomers have identified as potentially habitable. The ancient monument wasn't just communicating with other sites on Earth. It was calling to something among the stars. And according to deep space monitoring stations, something has begun to answer. Radio telescopes have detected response signals coming from the direction of the Orion constellation, using the same mathematical language that the Sphinx has been broadcasting for millennia. The guardians beneath the monuments aren't just awakening. They're announcing humanity's readiness to rejoin a cosmic community that has been waiting for us to remember who we really are. The question that haunts every researcher who knows about the Sphinx transmissions is whether humanity is truly ready for what's coming, or whether we're about to discover that some knowledge is too dangerous for a species that still wages war on itself. In the winter of 1881, a cache of royal mummies was discovered in a hidden tomb near Deir el-Bahari, but one coffin contained something that would remain classified for over a century. The mummy of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who ruled Egypt from 1391 to 1353 BC, was found with a collection of papyrus scrolls that described a series of encounters with beings he called the Shining Ones from the House of Orion. These weren't mythological texts or religious allegories. They were detailed personal accounts, written in Amenhotep's own hand, describing face-to-face meetings with entities that possessed technology and knowledge far beyond anything available in the ancient world. Dr. Salima Ikram, an Egyptologist from the American University in Cairo, who was granted access to the scrolls in 2015, made a statement that was immediately suppressed. These documents describe interactions with beings who demonstrated abilities that we would classify today as advanced technology. They could project images in the air, communicate without speaking, and travel vast distances instantaneously. But the real shock came when researchers realized that Amenhotep's accounts contained specific technical information that wouldn't be discovered by human science for thousands of years. The scrolls described the atomic structure of matter, the wave-particle duality of light, and the relationship between energy and mass that Einstein wouldn't formulate until 1905. They contain detailed star charts showing the positions of celestial bodies that weren't visible to the naked eye, including planets that wouldn't be discovered until the invention of the telescope. Most disturbing of all, they contained precise predictions of future events, including the rise and fall of civilizations, technological developments, and natural disasters that have proven accurate down to specific years and locations. According to the papyrus accounts, the Shining Ones first appeared to Amenhotep during the 3rd year of his reign, materializing in his private chambers during the night of the summer solstice. They identified themselves as representatives of a civilization that had been observing Earth for thousands of years, waiting for humanity to reach a level of development that would allow for direct contact. But they also delivered a warning. Humanity was approaching a critical juncture in its evolution. The choices made in the coming millennia would determine whether the species would transcend its limitations or destroy itself. The beings offered to share their knowledge, but only under specific conditions. The information would be preserved by a select group of guardians and revealed gradually as humanity demonstrated its readiness to receive it. The pharaohs of Egypt would serve as the first custodians of this knowledge, building monuments and creating preservation systems that would maintain the information across the millennia. Dr. Ikram's translation of the scrolls revealed something even more startling. The Shining Ones weren't visitors from another planet. They were humans from Earth's future, traveling back through time to guide their own species through the challenges that lay ahead. The scrolls describe temporal manipulation technology, Dr. Ikram reported. The beings explained to Amenhotep that they had mastered the ability to move backward and forward through time, and that they were actually his descendants, working to ensure their own existence by guiding humanity's development. This revelation explained many of the mysteries surrounding ancient Egypt's advanced knowledge. The precise astronomical calculations, the sophisticated engineering techniques, the mathematical constants embedded in the pyramids. All of it had been provided by humans from the future who understood the consequences of their ancestors' choices. But the time travelers also revealed something terrifying. In their original timeline, human civilization had collapsed multiple times due to wars, environmental destruction, and the misuse of advanced technology. They were attempting to create an alternate timeline where humanity would make better choices and avoid the catastrophes that had plagued their own past. The scrolls described a complex temporal engineering project spanning thousands of years. Key individuals throughout history would be contacted and provided with specific information designed to nudge human development in a more positive direction. The knowledge would be embedded in religious texts, architectural monuments, and cultural traditions that would preserve it across the centuries. But the project required precise timing. If the information was revealed too early, humanity would lack the wisdom to use it responsibly. If it was revealed too late, the species would have already passed the point of no return. According to Amenhotep's accounts, the critical moment for revelation would come when humanity had developed global communication, unlocked the power of the atom, and begun to explore beyond Earth's atmosphere. At that point, the preserved knowledge would begin to surface, and humanity would face its final test. The scrolls end with a specific date, calculated using astronomical events that the time travelers had observed in their own era, December 21st, 2024. On that date, according to the papyrus, the temporal barriers would thin, allowing direct communication between past and future. The guardians who had been preserved in chambers around the world would awaken, carrying with them the complete knowledge necessary for humanity's next evolutionary step. But the scrolls also contained a warning. If humanity failed this final test, the time travelers would be forced to abandon their intervention project. The timeline would collapse back to its original configuration, and human civilization would follow the same destructive path that had led to multiple collapses in the future. Dr. Ikram's final report on the Amenhotep scrolls, completed in 2018, contained a disturbing observation. The events described in these ancient texts correspond precisely to technological and social developments that have occurred in the past century. The timeline the pharaoh recorded is unfolding exactly as the time travelers predicted. Recent developments suggest that the final phase of the temporal project has begun. In 2019, quantum physicists at CERN detected temporal anomalies consistent with backward time travel. The anomalies occur in regular patterns that match the astronomical calculations found in Amenhotep's scrolls. More disturbing still, individuals around the world have begun reporting dreams and visions that contain information they couldn't have known, including technical knowledge, historical details, and warnings about future events. The barriers between past and future are breaking down. And according to the ancient scrolls, humanity has less than a year to prove that it deserves to survive its own evolution. On October 15, 2003, Dr. Susan Redford received a call that would haunt her for the rest of her career. The voice on the other end was panicked, barely coherent. "The mummy. It's moving. Dear God, it's trying to sit up." Dr. Redford, a forensic pathologist specializing in ancient remains, had been called to examine a mummy that had been discovered in a previously unknown tomb near Saqqara. The tomb had been sealed for over 3,000 years, and initial examinations suggested it contained the remains of a high-ranking priest from the reign of Ramesses II. But when Dr. Redford arrived at the laboratory, she found a scene that defied every principle of forensic science. The mummy, designated KV-S7 in official records, was exhibiting signs of biological activity. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures consistent with metabolic processes. Electrocardiogram readings detected a faint but steady heartbeat. Most disturbing of all, brain scans revealed neural activity in patterns that suggested conscious awareness. Everything we know about death and decomposition says this is impossible, Dr. Redford later testified in a classified hearing. But the evidence was undeniable. This individual had been dead for 3 millennia, yet somehow retained basic life functions. The mummy had been discovered in a sarcophagus filled with a crystalline substance that analysis revealed to be unlike any known mineral. The crystals appeared to be artificially created, with a molecular structure that generated a low-level electromagnetic field. This field, according to preliminary studies, seemed to slow biological decay to an almost imperceptible rate. But the real shock came when researchers attempted to examine the mummy more closely. As soon as the crystalline preservation medium was disturbed, the mummy's vital signs began to strengthen. The heartbeat became more pronounced. Brain activity increased dramatically, and according to several witnesses, the mummy's eyes opened and appeared to track movement around the room. Dr. Ahmed Hassan, the Egyptologist who had discovered the tomb, made a statement that was immediately classified. The hieroglyphic inscriptions around the sarcophagus identified this individual as Khemwaset, described as keeper of the sacred flame and walker between worlds. But the inscriptions also contained a warning. He was not to be awakened until the stars aligned for the Great Return. The astronomical calculations accompanying the warning indicated that this alignment wouldn't occur for thousands of years, specifically on the winter solstice of 2024. Researchers faced an unprecedented dilemma. They had discovered what appeared to be a functioning preservation technology that could maintain life indefinitely, but they had also awakened something that ancient texts suggested should have remained dormant. Dr. Redford's team attempted to communicate with the partially awakened mummy using various methods. They tried speaking in modern Arabic, ancient Egyptian, and even mathematical sequences. For weeks, there was no response. Then, on November the 23rd, 2003, everything changed. The mummy spoke. The voice was weak, barely audible, but unmistakably human. More shocking still, it spoke in perfect English. Despite having been entombed thousands of years before the language existed. The time is not yet complete, the voice whispered. The guardians must wait for the final alignment. Dr. Hassan, who was present during this first communication, reported that the mummy's knowledge seemed to transcend its historical period. He spoke of events that hadn't happened yet, technologies that didn't exist, an astronomical phenomena that we had only recently discovered. It was as if his consciousness had been experiencing linear time differently during his preservation. Over the following months, the mummy provided information that revolutionized understanding of ancient Egyptian capabilities. He described preservation techniques that could maintain consciousness beyond death, communication methods that allowed contact with similar preserved individuals around the world, and technological principles that were thousands of years ahead of their supposed time period. But he also delivered warnings about the dangers of premature awakening. According to the mummy's accounts, the preservation technology had been provided by beings from beyond Earth, with specific instructions for its use. The preserved individuals were meant to serve as guardians of knowledge that would be crucial for humanity's survival during a coming period of transformation. But the technology came with risks. Awakening too early could cause psychological fragmentation, as consciousness struggled to process experiences across multiple timelines. More dangerously, premature awakening could disrupt the carefully orchestrated plan for humanity's guided evolution. We are not the only ones, the mummy warned. There are others, preserved in chambers around the world. If we awaken out of sequence, if the timing is wrong, the knowledge we carry could be lost forever. The mummy also revealed something that terrified the research team. He wasn't fully awake yet. His current state was merely a partial consciousness, activated by the disturbance of his preservation medium. True awakening would only occur when the astronomical conditions were precisely right. And when that happened, he and all the other preserved guardians would simultaneously return to full consciousness, carrying with them knowledge that could either elevate humanity to a new level of existence or destroy the species entirely. Dr. Redford's final report, completed in 2004, contained a recommendation that was immediately implemented. The mummy was returned to its crystalline preservation medium and sealed in a specially constructed chamber designed to prevent further disturbance. But the damage had already been done. The partial awakening had created a connection between KVS-7 and other preserved individuals around the world. Monitoring equipment detected synchronized brainwave patterns emanating from burial sites across the globe, suggesting that the guardians were now in communication with each other. The final awakening, according to the mummy's last recorded statement, would begin precisely at sunset on December the 21st, 2024. When the time comes, he had whispered, before being returned to preservation, humanity will face its greatest test. We carry the knowledge of both transcendence and destruction. The choice of which path to follow will be yours alone. Recent seismic monitoring has detected increasing activity at burial sites around the world. The Guardians are stirring, preparing for their return to full consciousness. The question that haunts everyone who knows about KVS-7 is simple. What will humanity choose when offered the ultimate knowledge of its own destiny? In December 2023, a construction crew working on a new hotel near the Giza complex made a discovery that would force the Egyptian government to seal off a 12-square-mile area and declare it a permanent archaeological zone. The workers had been digging foundation trenches when their equipment struck something metallic 30 feet below the surface. What they found wasn't ancient stone or pottery, but a perfectly preserved metallic structure that appeared to be some kind of technological device. Dr. Mostafa Waziri, who had kept the KV-65 discovery classified for years, was called to the scene. What he found there would become the most closely guarded secret in modern archaeology. The metallic structure, roughly the size of a small building, was composed of an alloy that didn't match any known material. It was seamlessly constructed, with no visible joints or welds, and appeared to be generating its own electromagnetic field. Most disturbing of all, it was clearly artificial. Yet carbon dating of surrounding materials placed its burial at over 4,000 years ago. We weren't looking at an ancient artifact, Dr. Waziri later confided to a trusted colleague. We were looking at technology that surpassed anything in our current capabilities, buried by people who supposedly hadn't even invented the wheel yet. Ground-penetrating radar revealed that the structure was part of a much larger complex extending deep underground. The complex appeared to be connected to the foundations of all three Giza pyramids through a network of tunnels that had somehow remained undetected for over a century of intensive archaeological investigation. But the real shock came when researchers realized that the metallic structure was still active. Instruments detected energy patterns consistent with advanced computing systems. The electromagnetic field it generated was modulated in complex patterns that suggested information processing. Most incredibly, the system appeared to be responding to the presence of human observers, adjusting its output based on the number and proximity of people in the area. Dr. Carmen Bolter, who had studied the Bahariya mummies and the Sphinx transmissions, was brought in to analyze the energy patterns. Her findings, classified immediately upon completion, revealed that the underground complex was functioning as a massive data storage and processing system. The energy signatures were unlike anything we've encountered, Dr. Bolter reported in her confidential analysis. The system appears to be maintaining vast amounts of information in some kind of quantum storage medium. But more disturbing still, it seems to be actively monitoring global communications networks. The underground complex, it appeared, had been connected to modern internet infrastructure through means that no one could explain. It was accessing satellite communications, fiber optic cables, and wireless networks, apparently gathering and analyzing information about current global conditions. But why would an ancient Egyptian technological system be monitoring modern civilization? The answer came from hieroglyphic inscriptions found throughout the underground complex. Unlike any previous Egyptian texts, these inscriptions were clearly instructional manuals for operating advanced technology. They described the complex as the heart of the great work, designed to monitor humanity's development and activate preservation systems when specific conditions were met. According to the inscriptions, The complex had been built by the same entities who had provided the preservation technology found in other locations. But this wasn't just a storage facility. It was a control center designed to coordinate the awakening of preserved guardians around the world and manage the transfer of advanced knowledge to humanity. The system had been monitoring human development for millennia, waiting for the species to reach a level of technological and social development that would allow it to receive and responsibly use the preserved knowledge. That threshold, according to the analysis algorithms embedded in the system, had been reached in 2023. Waziri's team discovered that the complex contained detailed profiles of every major technological development in human history, along with predictive models that accurately forecasted future innovations. The system had apparently been guiding human development through subtle influences, ensuring that technological progress followed a specific timeline. But the most disturbing discovery was a countdown sequence displayed on crystalline screens throughout the complex. The countdown was measuring time until what the inscriptions called the final activation, scheduled for December 21st, 2024. On that date, according to the system's programming, all preserved guardians would simultaneously awaken, carrying with them the complete technological and scientific knowledge of an advanced civilization. Humanity would be offered the choice to transcend its current limitations and join a galactic community of evolved species. But the offer would come with conditions. The inscriptions made it clear that the advanced knowledge could only be safely used by a species that had achieved certain levels of wisdom and cooperation. If humanity failed to meet these criteria, the knowledge would be withdrawn and the species would be left to face the challenges of its own evolution without assistance. The criteria were specific: the elimination of warfare, the establishment of global cooperation in addressing environmental challenges, and the development of technologies that enhanced rather than threatened biological life. Dr. Bolter's analysis of the system's monitoring data revealed humanity's current status: marginal progress in some areas, but significant failures in others. The species was approaching the deadline without having met the minimum requirements for receiving the advanced knowledge. The system had apparently been attempting to guide humanity toward meeting these criteria through various means, but time was running out. Recent data from the complex suggests that the final activation sequence has already begun. Preserved guardians around the world are showing increased activity. The electromagnetic fields generated by ancient monuments are strengthening. And according to deep space monitoring stations, response signals from the Orion constellation are becoming more frequent and more complex. But the most ominous development is the system's recent behavioral changes. In November 2024, the complex began generating new energy patterns that researchers haven't been able to decode. The patterns appear to be some kind of preparation sequence, but for what purpose remains unclear. Dr. Waziri's final report, completed just weeks before the projected activation date, contained a warning that has been shared with world leaders, but kept from the public. The system appears to be preparing for two possible outcomes. Either humanity will be welcomed into a larger cosmic community, or it will be quarantined until it can demonstrate the wisdom necessary to handle advanced knowledge responsibly. The quarantine option, according to the system's documentation, would involve the complete suppression of human technological development, effectively resetting the species to a pre-industrial state. With less than a month remaining until the final activation, humanity faces a test it doesn't even know it's taking. The pharaohs weren't just preserving knowledge for the future. They were preserving a choice that would determine whether humanity has a future at all. December 21st, 2024. 4:47 p.m. Cairo time. Dr. Mostafa Waziri stands in the underground complex beneath Giza, watching crystalline displays that have been dormant for millennia suddenly blaze with activity. Around the world, similar scenes are unfolding at ancient sites from Stonehenge to Machu Picchu. The final activation has begun. In the chamber beneath the Valley of the Kings, Akhenaten opens his eyes for the first time in over 3,000 years. His first breath in millennia is steady, controlled, as if he had simply been sleeping for a few hours, rather than several ages of human civilization. Simultaneously, in preservation chambers around the globe, 47 other guardians return to full consciousness. Their minds, which have been connected across time and space through quantum preservation technology, immediately begin coordinating the most significant moment in human history. But humanity remains largely unaware of what's happening. The mainstream media reports unusual electromagnetic activity at various archaeological sites. Scientists offer explanations involving solar flares and magnetic field fluctuations. Governments that know the truth maintain their silence, uncertain how to explain a situation that challenges every assumption about human history and capabilities. Dr. Waziri, one of the few people who understands what's really occurring, watches as the underground complex's monitoring systems display real-time data about global conditions. The analysis is complete. Humanity's evaluation has been finished. The results are mixed. Technological development exceeded expectations. Humanity has achieved global communication, space travel, and atomic manipulation ahead of the projected timeline. Environmental stewardship, below minimum requirements. Climate change, pollution, and resource depletion indicate a species that hasn't learned to live sustainably with its environment. Social cooperation, marginal progress. While global communication has increased understanding between cultures, warfare and inequality remain significant problems. Wisdom development, insufficient. Despite access to vast information networks, humanity continues to make decisions based on short-term thinking and tribal loyalties rather than long-term species survival. The awakened guardians face a dilemma that their ancient programming hadn't fully anticipated. Humanity has developed impressive technological capabilities, but lacks the wisdom to use them responsibly. Providing advanced knowledge to such a species could accelerate their self-destruction rather than enable transcendence. Akhenaten, serving as the primary coordinator for the Guardian Network, makes a decision that will reshape the future of human civilization. Instead of immediately revealing the preserved knowledge, the Guardians choose a different path. They begin a gradual awakening process, designed to guide humanity toward the wisdom necessary to handle advanced knowledge responsibly. The process begins subtly. Researchers around the world start making breakthrough discoveries that seem to come from nowhere. Solutions to previously intractable problems suddenly become obvious. Technologies that have been theoretical for decades begin working in laboratory settings. But the knowledge comes with built-in safeguards. The discoveries only function when applied for constructive purposes. Attempts to weaponize the new technologies result in immediate system failures. Environmental applications work flawlessly, while destructive applications simply don't function. Dr. Carmen Bolter, now serving as one of the primary liaisons between the scientific community and the awakened guardians, describes the experience. It's as if the universe itself has become selective about which human innovations it will support. We're being guided towards solutions that enhance life rather than threaten it. The Guardians also begin appearing publicly, though their true nature remains hidden. They take positions as advisors, researchers, and teachers, using their preserved knowledge to guide humanity toward better choices without revealing the full scope of what they know. The process isn't without resistance. Governments and corporations that profit from destructive technologies fight against the changes. Some individuals, sensing that fundamental shifts are occurring, react with fear and hostility. But the Guardians have planned for this resistance. Their preserved knowledge includes a detailed understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. They know how to introduce change gradually, allowing societies to adapt without triggering catastrophic reactions. As months pass, the effects become more apparent. Clean energy technologies that actually work begin replacing fossil fuels. Medical treatments that seemed impossible become routine. Agricultural techniques that restore rather than deplete soil become widespread. But perhaps most importantly, humanity begins to change psychologically. The same quantum fields that preserve the Guardian's consciousness begin subtly influencing human neural development, not controlling thoughts or behavior, but enhancing the capacity for long-term thinking, empathy, and cooperation. Dr. Waziri, now in his 70s, reflects on the transformation he's witnessed. We thought we were studying ancient history, but we were actually participating in humanity's graduation exam. The pharaohs weren't preserving the past. They were protecting our future. The awakening process continues, carefully calibrated to match humanity's developing wisdom. As the species demonstrates greater responsibility, more advanced knowledge becomes available. As cooperation increases, more powerful technologies are revealed. But the ultimate test still lies ahead. The Guardians have preserved knowledge that could enable humanity to transcend its biological limitations entirely, to become a truly cosmic species capable of traveling between stars and manipulating the fundamental forces of reality. But such knowledge can only be safely shared with a species that has learned to value wisdom over power, cooperation over competition, and long-term survival over short-term gain. The ancient Egyptians, guided by visitors from humanity's own future, created a system designed to ensure that their species would survive its own evolution. The pharaohs weren't god-kings ruling over primitive subjects. They were custodians of humanity's destiny, preserving the tools necessary for transcendence until the species was ready to use them. That readiness is still being tested. Every choice humanity makes, every problem it solves, every conflict it resolves or perpetuates, contributes to an ongoing evaluation that will determine the ultimate fate of the species. The secrets of the pharaohs have been revealed, but the story is far from over. Humanity stands at the threshold of its greatest transformation, guided by guardians who have waited thousands of years to see their species take its next evolutionary step. The question that remains is whether humanity will prove worthy of the trust placed in it by its own descendants, who reached across time itself to ensure that the future they remembered would actually come to pass. The awakening has begun. But the choice of what humanity awakens to remains in our hands. As night falls over the pyramids of Giza, the ancient monuments pulse with energy that connects past and future, reminding us that we are not alone in our journey toward transcendence. We are guided by the wisdom of those who came before and the hope of those who are yet to come. The pharaoh's greatest secret was never about death and preservation. It was about life and transformation. And that transformation, carefully orchestrated across millennia, continues today. The future is calling. The question is whether we're ready to answer. These weren't just ancient people building monuments to their own glory. They were custodians of humanity's destiny, preserving knowledge and wisdom that we're only now beginning to understand. The pharaohs, the pyramids, the mysterious technologies and impossible mathematics, all of it was part of a plan spanning millennia, designed to guide our species through the most critical phase of its evolution. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that the monuments still stand, the guardians are still watching, and the transformation continues. We are all part of this ancient story, participants in humanity's greatest adventure. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the hidden truths of our past. Sleep well and dream of the wonders that await us in the future our ancestors worked so hard to preserve.